I recently finished the Foundations path and I'm going to basically make a short review of it. So what will you learn? Is it worth learning? And what did I learn? So is it worth learning? Yes, I found it a lot more useful than online course video tutorials, because obviously it's project based and then you get out of just watching tutorials over and over and over and just doing follow alongs, which are never really as good as building your own thing, because the mindset that you develop from building your own projects is really important and actually quite useful. So how does it start? So it'll explain how it works. This first part is purely just an introduction of how the course will work, the introduction to web development, and you can read the rest of it for yourself. The next part, installations, it's purely just install a bunch of things if you follow that will allow you to start coding. So if you're on a Windows like I am, they will ask you to install a virtual machine or dual boot your PC into Linux, I believe, or Ubuntu. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I didn't do that. I just did it on Windows and I didn't find any problems. I would recommend you probably install a virtual machine or dual boot your PC if you're on Windows, but because the support will be less if you're on Windows. The next part is Git basics, where they just teach you about Git and GitHub, what they are, what they do. Git is basically just version control. It's like a nice long timeline of your code. If you have a project, you can make commits, and every time you make a commit, that's like a period in time for your code, so you can go back in time in a sense if you make mistakes or just want to go back for any other reasons. Finally, we get started with actual coding. So HTML is a markup language that you use for web, and you get taught about that. It's basically the structure of all websites. Think of it like the beams and walls of a house. Next, they teach you a bit of CSS. And Flexbox, which is a part of CSS, a more complicated part of CSS. Next is the CSS, which is basically the styling, so the color of the walls in your house and the location of the walls in your house. And Flexbox is just a component of CSS that's incredibly useful. So they have a whole section on Flexbox, and then you build the project landing page, which is quite simple. You build a landing page using HTML and CSS. The link to my GitHub and all my projects will be in the description if you want to check them out. Finally, you get to the JavaScript section, and JavaScript is the third language you use for front-end web development, and basically that allows your website to have a bit of functionality, so like opening a door in your house or an elevator in a building that actually goes up rather than just being there. That JavaScript allows you to do all of that. And then they tell you a little bit about the backend and a little conclusion section to choose your path forward. So before starting the Odin project, I was learning a bit of Python until I realized I don't actually have a great reason to be learning Python, and web development's more interesting. So I switched to web development, found the Odin project, and started it. This really develops the Odin project is a great mindset developer of how you will actually code things. So many people spend a lot of time coding, but they follow a lot of video tutorials and follow-alongs where you basically just follow it. If you get an error, you can just check your code against that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I messed up there, and just change it there and that. That's not a great way to code, because if someone tells you to build something from scratch, you don't know what you're doing. But with the Odin project, since you build things from scratch, it starts out easy. And progressively gets harder, which is how you actually learn, by progressively getting harder and harder and harder, but not so hard to the point where you can't do anything. So that's really good. There's a great Discord server where you can ask for help, and obviously they teach you how to Google things, which is incredibly helpful skill. Apart from it helping with coding, it's actually just helped me with other things as well. Because I do a lot of Googling. So next, how long will it take for you to complete it? Well, it really depends on a multiple of factors. I don't think you should really try to complete it as fast as possible, but I think you should try to be efficient when you do it so you don't waste time, but also make sure you're really taking in the information and not rushing things if you don't understand them, because then, well, you're going to have to come back later and spend time relearning it, which is kind of pointless. So just learn it from the start and you'll be good. So I just want to show you the 4 projects that you build on the foundation section. So the first one is the landing page with the HTML and CSS, no JavaScript yet. And if you want a more in-depth video about it, there is one on my channel, but it's quite simply a landing page. Alright, so the next project is a rock, paper, scissors game in the console, not an actual UI for it. So you have a prompt asking you rock, paper, scissors, and you just play it. So rock, paper, scissors, you draw, play against a computer, obviously, paper, or draw again, obviously, paper, or draw again, scissors, oh, we lost. And at the end I made it so you can go quit and it gives you the scores and whoever won. The next is the Etch A Sketch project, which I also have a video on explaining, where you just simply draw on a canvas, grid, whatever you want to call it. You can have a pen color, make the grid bigger, have a rainbow pen, erase, change the background, toggle the grid so you can individually see each square that you can draw on. Oh, we need to turn off the eraser. You can make them smaller, bigger, really big if you wanted to. Yeah, pretty neat project. And the last project is a calculator that you make. So the last project that you build is a calculator with a UI, and it's quite simple. So just a nice little calculator, does equations. You can even add keyboard support if you decide you want to challenge yourself a bit more. But yeah, works nicely. You can add negative numbers. You can add negative numbers. -9 plus 6, -3. And if you want a video explaining the calculator project, I'll be happy to make one. Thank you for watching and have a good day.